think the percentage is of people that start nonprofits for the right reasons versus those that set them up for like tax efficiency or maybe some behind the scenes action?
So I think it falls into three categories. I think it falls into the people that are starting a nonprofit that really want to do good, right? Like,
what do you think the percentage is? 30%? 40%?
I'd probably say like between 35 and 40% is probably solely based on, like, and this is tough to say, but like somebody that lost a child from cancer that's like, hey, we're going to start this foundation to honor my daughter who passed away or whatever. Like, I've consulted on a lot of stuff like that. Those things, a lot of the time, 100% the right reasons.
Right.
And then you have people in the middle, right, where like a lot of athletes fall into this space, like basketball players, football players, guys that are making real large amounts of sums in short amount of time. A lot of them will be consulted by their tax people or whoever it may be, attorneys, to start their own nonprofit, right? So they start that nonprofit, and a lot of the times it started for tax protection, to how do you alleviate some of your money, and also, hey, I'm taking care of my boy, I got my mom is going to run the foundation, so then it turns into a way to pay some of these people that you're giving money to anyways, right? That's one circumstance. But then out of that, like you look at something like Luka just came to LA, right, as a Laker. His family foundation that he created gave $500,000 to the city of Los Angeles to help them rebuild and do all those things. Now, for somebody like Luka, $500,000, not that much money. But he's got this foundation that was probably set up so that, hey, if I need to pay my friends or I need to take care of my people, great, I can do that. And then it turns into, hey, I really am employing these people. We really do want to do good with this nonprofit. So what are we doing with our family foundation, right? So that's kind of in the middle where it might be started for a different reason, and then it turns into, hey, they're doing great work and he's got to give that money away anyways. And now maybe his family or his friends are running it and they're doing great work with their organizations and stuff like that.
So kind of best of both worlds.
Yes. Then you get the other side of the equation. And let's call that like 15%, right? Then you have the other side of the equation. And
wait, 15 is doing it for the right reason.
It's like in the middle, right? So you got maybe 40% that are like 100% the right reason, doing it the right reason.
Wait a minute. You're saying that almost 50% are not doing it for the right reasons.
That's a real big number. And I realize that might be kind of shocking to say, and maybe it's not quite that big, but it's not far off.
Whoa.
And
so what does that look like? And this is probably something that you're familiar with as well, just from you being a financial advisor, and I know you sat on a handful of, or still do sit on a handful of nonprofits. Like, what does that look like? This is a world I don't know. I've never had a foundation. I've never done this.
Yeah.
Why do people want to create nonprofits for the wrong reasons?
Well, it's not necessarily the wrong reasons. It's to take advantage of the tax loopholes that exist. And a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, when you say foundations, that's a very broad term. There's public foundations, there's churches, there's all kinds of different things, right?
Fair. So let's say...
But when you really look at the crux of some of these foundations, perfect example right now, this environment that we're in, when you start looking at...
I know you're going to say it.
There's a lot of public and government institutions that use it to launder money. Like, when you really get down to the crux of it, there are foundations, and I don't want to end up on a hit list, so I'm not going to say any names.
I knew
people
you
can
were
do their
going there.
own research.
Yep.
You start looking at some of these foundations that are very well known, and that's the one thing is, you can start drilling down on these, especially these public foundations, like their 990s are public record. You can start looking at some of these organizations that a lot of people give to pretty consistently over the decades, and the amount of work being done, I'm not saying they're not doing good work, but the amount of work that's being done for the amount of money that they're being gifted or donated, receiving donations from, is egregious.
Okay, so how, for somebody that has like a public, is it 990? Mm-hmm. How good if somebody was interested in giving money to an organization,
Yeah.
and wanted to find out, like, is this a good organization for me to give to? Are they actually putting money into the need?
Yep.
Is there like an expense ratio that's a red flag? Like if they're spending 70%
There's a lot
of
of
their
them.
money on expenses, is that something you stick away from? What's the threshold?
Yeah, well, those are great questions. And the threshold from a legal standpoint, it's like depending on the designation that you have in the state that you're registered in. I mean, you can look at organizations that are giving less than 10% of what they raise to anything charitable.
It also depends on size.
And it depends on the size.
Like it depends on their budget.
Okay, so at what point, what I'm trying to get at is, if somebody wanted to do this, is there some type of framework you can give them? Like, okay, if the foundation is below $1 million, they're probably going to spend a majority of their money on expenses because it's a small entity. And as it starts scaling up, you should see this. And is there a statement you can make that is, if an organization north of, raising $10 million a year is spending 90% on their expenses, 80% of their expenses.
There's no regulation.
Take the regulation out
We're
for
talking
now.
about from like a donor's perspective.
Yeah,
So-
like how could a donor walk in and go, you're spending 90%, I can't mess with you.
No, this is pretty easy, and I'll let you jump in. But there's two things that I'll say. First of all, if you're giving to an organization and you can't find the 990, or they don't give you the transparency on their website, that's the first red flag. Because especially in this day and age, as a donor, you want to know where your money is going. You want to know what it's going towards. And so that, to me, and there's third-party providers now that you can look into, right, that are like basically
charity
navigators, advisors. So you can kind of look at, okay, hey, they raised $10 million and there was only, they only gave $1 million to something charitable. Everything else went to paying employees, the list goes on and on. And so, like for us with Agents vs. Cancer, what we're doing, we're super transparent. So if you're giving to our organization, one of our internal programs, or giving to one of our charitable hospitals or something like that, it's 90-10. So if you give us $100, 90% is going to the cause, 10% stays to us so that we can build and do what we're doing. Transparent across the board, and every one of our programs is structured that way. We make our 990 available on our website. To me, if an organization, big or small, is not doing that, first red flag as a donor, because you want to have that transparency. You want to have that understanding of like, hey, when I'm giving them money, I know what it's doing.